freezer died last night.
Oh my.
Yeah. I get this text at 8 o'clock in the morning. So now your refrigerator and freezer throw everything away. We don't know how long the refrigerator was off.
Good afternoon. We are live. Blessings to all of you. Wow. I think I need to make some changes to how I've got things set up in here. Now that I actually have a camera again. I'm looking at my little screen here in the little corner. There we go. There we go. I gotta raise my hand up high enough so it actually shows up where it's supposed to be. Looking at that, wow, color correction's like way off. My face is almost completely washed out. Not that that might not be an improvement. Anyhow, we're going to pick up here at verse 17. So let's go ahead and get started. Gracious Lord, bless us once again with your wisdom, that we may grow in faith towards you and in love towards one another. For Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Okay, so we're picking up pretty much where we left off last week with Proverbs 17:17. And this continues the little loose subsection of avoiding fools and what fools are and the consequences of foolishness. Sorry, the upcoming loosely bound section is avoiding fools and their foolishness. But so anyhow, as we are picking up in 17, one of the things I want to remind people is the groupings here that we are using are loose groupings. They're not something that is set in stone. So when we come to a passage like here with these two verses, we can go and take them in stride. Yeah, they don't quite fit, but okay. Anyhow, so 17 and 18 here. A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. One who lacks sense gives a pledge and puts up security in the presence of his neighbor. Now, these verses here, they don't quite seem to fit. Particularly verse 17, a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. That doesn't exactly sound like a description of a fool.
It seems weird to see a brother born for adversary.
Adversity?
Yeah.
Well, the statement was, it seems weird to see a brother born for adversity. Well, it depends on how you want to take it. If you want to take it as he's saying that a brother is born to cause adversity, yeah, that would sound really weird. But if you want to take it that a brother was born to help us get through adversity, there's also that. At the same time, we could also take a Christological view of that and say, yes, a brother is born for adversity. Because Jesus was born in particular for adversity, namely to crush it. But in doing so, he had to endure adversity. And let's face it, a crucifixion is not exactly what one would call a pleasant walk in a park.
Is that where it's going? A friend loves at all times, because you would think a brother would love more than a friend.
In this case, I want to say, it's helpful to remember that Hebrew deals in parallels. So these verses actually go together. They could definitely be understood as describing the same person. And so oops, I got the pointer, not the pen working. There we go. All right. So we could look at this as say that this is the same person. So there's nothing in here that says that these two have to be two different people. And so I would go with the same person. So and part of that is because I would like to actually be able to take a Christological view, and it also works that way. We can see Jesus here. Whoa.
Yeah. Friend loves at all times to be Jesus.
Yeah, I as we sing in the one hymn, what a friend we have in Jesus. Seriously, what a friend do we have? We have quite the friend, for this is the friend who loves at all times. He's also our brother who was born for our redemption, and in doing so, he did endure our adversity. All right. So in some ways, I would say that actually kind of stands in contrast to everything else that we're reading in this particular section. So again, as I said before, these groupings are pretty loose. Anyhow, moving onwards, 18. That can be a little confusing here. One who lacks sense gives a pledge and puts up security in the presence of his neighbor. I think it may be a little bit clearer if we translated it slightly differently. A person without sense strikes hands or confirms a deal, guaranteeing a loan for his neighbor. That I think it makes a little bit more sense than the. Okay, so why is it? What is foolish? What is nonsensical about putting up security? Well, when you look at verse 18 with in this different translation, the one that I picked up from Steinman. A person without sense strikes hands, confirms a deal, makes a deal, guaranteeing a loan for his neighbor. In other words, this person is putting themselves at the mercy of their neighbor. Now, that would sound like something that a good Christian, a good faithful, wise person would do. They would do things to help out their neighbor. This is most certainly true. I want to say that Solomon is making things a little bit clear that, okay, this isn't the same as the foolishness of unbelief, but it's also not a smart thing to do, or a truly wise thing to do. For one, we are to avoid being in debt. Two, you're going into debt to help somebody. The Lord actually never calls us to do that. Never actually calls us to beggar ourselves to help others. He calls those who have an abundance to help those without. So if we could look at it this way, in the book of Ruth, you have two redeemers. The redeemers are those people who can get a family member out of debt, basically. And the one redeemer is Boaz, who of course is the one who actually goes on to redeem Ruth and Naomi. Well, actually I should say, put that the other way, Naomi and by way of Naomi, Ruth. But there was another redeemer, another family member who could have been in a position to get them out of their debt by buying their land. He was not in a position to do so. So Boaz, who had more than enough, was able to step in and do the redemption. the senseless thing would have been for the guy who really wasn't in a position to do the act of redemption would be to take out a loan to get somebody else out of a loan. This is where that proverb is going. It's, look, it is a good thing to help your neighbor. It's not a good thing to put yourself into debt to do that. In a sense, what they're talking about here is co-signing. The reason people co-sign loans is because that the person who is the primary signator is too high of a credit risk. And so, they're being put completely at the mercy of somebody who's, well, a risky proposition to begin with. Oh, wow. And I'm not saying we should, I'm looking at my screen over here, and wow, that was just like really bad. Let's see if I can get this to look nicer. What was I saying? Oh, yes. We're at the mercy of somebody who's already at risk of not being able to pay back. And so we put ourselves at risk of having to pay back, and not only pay back, but be in a position ourselves of not being able to pay back our stuff. So it's like, look, be merciful, but don't be dumb about it. Give from the abundance, not from what you don't have. And there are other ways to express mercy to those who are in need outside of buying their debts. I mean, I've had this conversation with other folks who were struggling. They heard the law about, well, we should be more merciful, and when they were feeling guilty about not being able to give, so we had that talk of, well, there's other ways to do it. I mean, for example, within our own congregation, we help out at daybreak. You don't got money, you can go help out with daybreak. Go feed hungry people. It doesn't cost you a thing, except for some time. It's a good thing to do. So, it's essentially this proverb just comes down to be merciful, but just don't be stupid about it. All right, 19 through 20. Whoever loves transgression loves strife. He who makes his door high seeks destruction. A man of crooked heart does not discover good. Okay, this is just pretty much what I'm going to say here. You ever seen a bent arrow hit what it was aimed at? Of course, that's assuming. Have you ever tried shooting a bow and arrow? Yeah. I love archery. It's actually quite fun, but it can also be incredibly frustrating. I take a group of middle schoolers up to one of the local Lutheran camp, and when the weather's nice, it's not 10 below, which has been known to be at this retreat. We'll go out to their archery range and we'll shoot their bows. And these bows are not the nicest of bows, and they're pretty much a step up from a toy bow. And their arrows have been shot many times by people who really aren't all that skilled at shooting. They've had some rough wear and tear. Attempting to hit the target with one of those things is an exercise in frustration. And to give you an idea, to hit the last time I was out there to hit the target, I was actually aiming at the next target. A bent arrow does not go where it's supposed to go. I mean, if it was to go, in this case, if it was to go where it was supposed to have gone, it would be the target next to mine, not the target that's in front of me. And this was not a super long shot either. We're talking maybe 50 feet. So this is practically point blank range. So a bent arrow just doesn't hit what it's aimed at, and that's pretty much where this passage is going. And with a crooked heart, a crooked heart is not going to discover good because it's always going to be going off in the wrong direction. And it's the same way with that bent arrow. That arrow, because it's bent, is just going to go woo over there. Always drove me nuts. Once I figured these things out and started learning archery, it always drove me nuts to watch Disney's Robin Hood, because they've got that archery contest where Robin Hood is shooting this old rickety looking bow and these arrows that they're lashed together. I mean, the points aren't even. I mean, the shaft isn't even one piece, and he's doing these spectacular trick shots with those.
Skill.
Yeah, there is no amount of skill in the world that is going to hit an arrow in flight with that rickety arrow.
You forget that makes perfect.
Yeah. There's no practice for that kind of an arrow, because honestly you can't predict where it's going to go. But anyhow, so crooked arrow is just not gonna hit its mark. And the same thing with a crooked heart, it's never gonna hit the mark. And we can look at this passage as something of a commentary on original sin. Everybody is born with original sin. They've inherited it from their parents, who in turn from their parents, and all the way back to Adam. That original sin causes us to have a crooked heart. And this is why when we get to the Psalm 9. Oh, I know which. I know it's the beginning of the Book of Psalms, and now I'm drawing a blank on the number. The Psalm that's quoted by Paul, that no one does good, not one. No one seeks God. No one. And the reason is because of the crooked heart. It actually destroys the ability to do that. So even if it wanted to find God, it's not going to find God, but it is going to find God of its own devising. If there's one common pitfall that we will all have, it is we end up looking for this God of our own devising. And it all comes back to having the crooked heart. Alright, 21 through 24. He who sires a fool gets himself sorrow, and the father of a fool has no joy. A joyful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. The wicked accepts a bribe in secret, to pervert the ways of justice. The discerning sets his face toward wisdom, but the eyes of the fool are on the ends of the earth. Okay, with this passage, we end up on the other side of the coin, to speak. particularly with the part about the bribe. If you go back to the beginning of this little mini section that we've been in, we have that the person who's giving a bribe thinks that he's got this magic talisman, this magic stone to get him whatever he wants. Well, that was foolish. Equally foolish is the one taking the bribe. Their foolishness, though, is not expressed in that they've got this magic bullet, but that they end up twisting justice. Bribes are not only dishonest. Bribes, they create injustice. God doesn't take kindly to that. One of the reasons that God sent Israel into exile is because they had perverted justice. And they weren't prosecuting the guilty, but they were prosecuting the innocent. They, in fact, it was basically coming down to the poor were suffering while the rich were not, because the rich were able to buy their way out of justice. Which isn't to say that the poor were innocent, but it was more along the lines of money shouldn't buy you justice. Or buy you innocence, for that matter. And that's how bribes were being used. And are used. And God doesn't take lightly to that. So he's given us both sides of that coin now. But anyhow, I love verse 21 here. He who sires a fool gets himself sorrow, and the father of a fool has no joy. It's not because I love what it's saying, it's because I love the fact of how it gets to the heart of the matter. Nothing is worse as a parent, than to watch your kids do foolish things. Boy, that's just it's hard to watch. Just with the way that we can hurt each other.
It's just sad. There's a lot of times when they are that way, there's nothing you can do to help them.
Yeah.
Because their mind's made up that it's the way it is and it's the way it is.
Yep. Pardon me, I got this, I was trying to fix my Word, and now it's doing the whole, I really want to give you that pop-up menu. Seriously, go away. There. I wanted to fix that because it just didn't look like an A. I don't know why they tied that into the little digitizer pin with the pushing down. Seriously. I don't actually want that to call up. But Alright, anyhow, I'm gonna have to wrap it up here because of services. So if you got questions, don't hesitate to ask them, and we will be back next week. Making sure here. Get out my calendar. Alright. And we'll see how things go next week. We also have our preschool closing that's going to be right before this Bible study. So I may just start this Bible study. I won't be able to start the Bible study late. So I think we may be just going ahead taking a break next week. This was one of those ones where I was like, okay, I need to figure this out, but it was dropped on me today, and I'm like, okay, I need some time to...
Cut yourself in two?
Hmm?
Can't cut yourself in two?
No. Man, I wish I could be in two places at once. That might make life a little easier. But, anyhow, it's not to be. We're going to take a couple of weeks, because following right after that's going to be Christmas. So, need a little recoup time. With that, blessings to all of you. Don't hesitate to ask your questions if you got them. And we'll see you back in a couple of weeks. Now I gotta remember how to turn this off.
They're not going to come back after Christmas, though. I mean, New Year's week. Or the week after.
We'll probably come back New Year's week. Alright, I probably just messed up the live stream here. Whoa! That's messed up. I think I would just close the program.